we are not appropriately fueling our bodies both before and during our workouts, the amount of work that we can do is simply limited.
Welcome back, everyone, to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
And this is episode 191.
Today, we are talking about training your gut. We train our endurance, we train our speed, we train our mobility and flexibility, and maybe our mental skills. So why not also train your belly to be able to handle the food that we need for our training and racing?
This is the one episode that every athlete needs to listen to.
I agree, and I think it's something that people don't think about often enough. And if they do think about it, it's oftentimes too late in their training, like too close to their race to really dial in a strategy that works for them.
My first very long distance tri season, I feel like I've told this story before. We had Coach Keith, shout out Coach K. Awesome coach, got me into coaching. I will never forget. He was a very positive person, much more positive than me as a coach. That is all him. And, pushed us for sure and wrote really compelling training and drove great groups. And we showed up for, I remember vividly, we went to Barrington to ride, and it was probably like a 3 or 4 hour ride. He had notes in our training peaks of what we were supposed to be doing, and it was very hot. And we all effed up our nutrition. We didn't bring enough fluids. We certainly didn't bring enough food. And this was like one of our first big outdoor rides. And I remember sitting in the parking lot after, and we're all just kind of like husks of ourselves, not because of fitness, but because we effed up our nutrition. Mm-hmm. And he got real mad.
Rightfully so.
He got real mad. And we listened because he's, again, normally like a pretty positive person. And he was like, this is the one thing that you can train and control on race day. But you have to practice it. You have to take it seriously. It is the variable that determines all other variables. And it's the one that you can control through practice.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me. And I was like, okay, I'm listening, right? And it really, obviously, the next time we went out, we had our shit together. But remember Coach K. He was calm until he wasn't. And that all came down to training your gut, because it is the thing that we tend to forget about. And it is the most controllable element in most endurance efforts.
So why focus on fuel training? Well, we know that the amount of training that we can actually do is limited by the amount of fuel that we have. So nutrition really is your key to running faster and longer and feeling stronger while you're out there.
So many athletes, when they start maybe integrating with our group or talking to a coach or any coach, honestly, or any group that manages nutrition as part of the training journey or talks about it, they say, oh my gosh, I feel so much better during and after my runs, in that I've like increased, or I am taking things now, and they also recover faster. It is, again, this thing that it's a lever we can pull that makes the biggest difference of anything that we do. So yeah, we're doing a whole episode on it for that reason.
Yeah, and go figure, science, right? So your body can store around 300 to 500 grams of carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. But what that actually means is when you burn 1 gram of glycogen, it releases 4 calories. And so your body's carbohydrate storage capacity is really between like 1,200 to 2,000 calories. So think about this in terms of like doing a marathon, as an example. If you do the math, this is why a lot of runners hit the wall at about mile 20 to 22, because we have run out of those stores. If we are not appropriately fueling our bodies both before and during our workouts, the amount of work that we can do is simply limited.
And I think people live in fear of this wall, thinking that it's a fitness issue. And again, 1,200 to 2,000 calories of any available glycogen, because your body, again, it's like a precious vial. It can only keep filling up that vial. It can't grow outward, right? It can't grow deeper. If you do not put enough in, and or if you're not digesting it because you haven't practiced it, that is going to happen at mile 18, 20, 22. Whenever you run out of those stores, you are going to feel like garbage because your body is not great. Unfortunately, most of us aren't super good at accessing our fat stores, especially during half and full marathons. So you got to put in order to be able to draw down and feel good.
And it makes sense because your body isn't used to, and your digestive tract is not used to like fueling your stomach while you are running, because when you're running, your body's concentration is on making sure that your muscles are able to do the work that they need to do, which takes the attention away from your gut. So we need to be able to train that process. Also, with running, so this is a reason why cyclists can eat different foods than runners, right?
Yes, they're not jostling around.
You have the bouncing motion of running, and so that really does make a difference. If you've ever run and had a sloshy stomach, it is a horrible feeling, but we don't typically have that equivalent on a bike ride. No. So this is something that's very specific to our runners and triathletes, but in the running portion of any race, we have to pay special attention to what's actually going to work for our bodies.
And just, with running, the more that we train, the more we can practice it, the more we can improve. And I will say as well, heading into summer season, what you can take and what you should take during the summer it can be pretty different than what your body can tolerate, because another element is that the blood's at your skin trying to keep you cool. And that's another way that it's not in your tummy. So avoid, especially race day disasters in the summer, because that is equally explosive. And all that to say, we have weeks ahead of us at this point where we are going to be able to practice and execute training our gut in warmer temps.
So if you have a race that is, not next weekend, you are in a good condition to start to figure out things to train with right now. So let's talk about how to actually train. The first thing I'll say is when you're trying to make any sort of changes, you should do one change at a time and not change your pre-race breakfast and then try 3 different gels and 2 sports drinks in your training session, because you're not going to know what has actually worked. And even on the flip side, if you have distress, you're not going to know which of those things actually caused you problems. So we want to make sure that we use week on week, that we're trying to figure out what works for us, and then if something does work, that we start to dial that in
and write it down. I'm telling another story here, so buckle in. I feel like I've told this one before too, but I had a very accomplished marathoner, and they were looking to run faster and try new fuels. I found out that on their last 2 long runs, I knew that they were experimenting with gels, but her solution was to surprise herself, and she had 4 different types of gels. It was height of summer, so she would just kind of stuff them into her sports bra pocket, and her watch would go off at 40 minutes, and she would just pull one out and suck it down, and she never knew the order. She's like, great long run, I took in this, and I'm like, but what? Oh, we tried 4 new gels in an order that we're not even sure what the order was, including caffeinated ones, salty ones. So yeah, write it down, 1 lever at a time. Please do not pull random things out of your sports bra or shorts and eat them without knowing what you're actually testing.
Yeah, so that's
just very adventurous.
That is, it's like running roulette. That's very fun. So a good tip here is to make sure that you're keeping track of this both before your runs and during your runs. You want to make sure that you are writing down in your training journal. And we did a whole episode about training journals. That's episode 134. So go back and check that one out. But we've broken this up into 2 different areas of nutrition. So you have your before run nutrition, which I'm kind of counting as your morning of and your night before.
Yep.
And then we have our during the runs. So let's talk about before the runs.
Yep. So first up, you can experiment with different things that you take in night before dinners and pre-run breakfast, especially as you head into bigger volumes in summer and early fall. This is a great thing. Maybe I have an athlete that does this miso glazed salmon and chicken with rice that is literally perfected how they run long on the weekend, because it's protein, a great amount of carbs, salt. It's everything that they love, and now it's just part of that ritual. So that's number 1 is figuring out night before and pre-run. As you said, keep your notes, keep your journal, think about how you feel, write about it, and then tweak it as needed, right? If you had maybe a salad, which please don't do that the day before a long run, but let's say that you really wanted to go to Sweetgreens. Shout out to one of my athletes who did this, and it did not end well for them. But really wanted, I think they had a coupon or something, and did a big salad from Sweetgreens, and then did a long run. Actually, I think it was a race, not an A race, and just exploded. Very, very, very bad race. And, that didn't work. So we know now to, I usually say, avoid head vegetables, anything that's leafy and green the day before, anything long. maybe just don't go gangbusters on that because it's going to create a lot of gas. You don't need fiber bombs the day before you run long. And of course, don't forget hydration and electrolytes, especially in hotter months and especially people that have smaller frames. We don't want you just guzzling a bunch of fluids and possibly diluting, how much electrolytes you have in your overall body. So we want you to increase hydration, but then also increase electrolytes in tandem heading into runs.
Yeah, one note about the pre-race dinner is if you know that you're going to be traveling for your race, think about where you're going to be and think about what your options are, right? So, having something that's sort of like universally found. I have an athlete who loves to have sushi before their race, and they know that they, in most places, can find a sushi restaurant. I had an athlete, speaking of fiber bombs, who was like, Chipotle's everywhere. I'll have Chipotle before and it was...
I've had many a successful Chipotle athlete, but the key is to not go crazy on the beans.
That's the key. So
let us do not fiber bomb yourself. Put that in your notes and ask a coach, or don't be afraid. Like if you explode, if you have stomach pain, diarrhea, etc. during a long run, don't be bashful. You don't have to say it in real time, but like ask someone you trust. You can DM me. I talk about poop all the time.
Yeah, most runners do.
Yeah, but it actually is an important piece to track it, because a lot of times we're like, I guess I just didn't have a good run. It's like, well, no, you gave yourself X, Y, and Z, and it hurt your tummy, and so you couldn't execute a long run. So we want to know what was the precipitating factor so that we can avoid that in the future.
Yeah, I just had a race debrief with an athlete yesterday, and she was kindly tiptoeing around stomach distress, and I was like, you had bubble guts, I get it.
Yes.
That was it. And we learned a lot of things from looking at what she had that morning, what she had the night before. And I think it wasn't the race performance that she wanted, but it was a lot of good clues of how to be better at racing. So you can learn a lot from this. Also before runs, that pre-run breakfast is really important. So making sure that you are getting calories in there. And again, that's something that you can get easily accessible or buy and bring with you before any traveling race. You want to dial that in. Now let's talk about during your run. So you want to be practicing with fuel. Again, if you're making changes to this fuel, doing just one change at a time, not doing the running roulette. It can be important for runners to find the texture and taste that works for you. So,
that is true. So many gels out there, you're just like, no, hard no. And some of them you're like, that was actually really good and I'm going to look forward to it. That's what you want to focus on. Don't choke something down and think that you have to take it.
Right. And just because other people are finding success with it doesn't mean that you will find success with it or that you even should try it if you have something that works for you already. So don't be influenced by other people's what the crowd is doing. We also have to be attentive to caffeine or non-caffeinated gels. So that's, to your point about the running roulette. Yep. When you time your caffeine is really important, and that's something that you can practice in your long runs and practice also in your speed sessions when you're doing harder efforts that are closer to race pace.
And not to scare you, but it's also a stimulant, and running is a diuretic. So if you ill-time this, or maybe you don't need to use caffeine, or maybe you need to use half the amount of caffeine, but if you spike it too high, you will have to poop very quickly. So another reason to practice it.
Yeah, I can't believe we haven't done an episode about poop yet.
That I have 191. I mean, let's go.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Don't poop pants.
You also want to experiment with your sources, experiment with your timing, and again, make those notes. So we have a few other tips as well. One is to use long runs and those pre-race efforts as your dress rehearsals. My athletes will see this in their training peaks every single Friday. Dress rehearsal for your long run, pre-run meal, and then the morning of. The more that we can practice and dial that routine in and get our body used to the same types of fuel, like your athlete with the miso glazed such and such, that's going to be your key to success on race day, because you're taking the question marks out of it and you have something that's tried and true.
I know we got more bullets, but I'm going to segue a little here too. Yeah. Once you find something that works, plan on it. This is why we do pre-orders at Edge, so that people can, one, save money, and two, buy in bulk. Because if you know that I think it's cucumber lime scratch is your jam and you are really loving it, then get a ton of it so that you can use that as your base, and then you can test things out on top of that, but you're not thinking the day before a long run, what do I have, right? And you're not constantly running out of it. When you find something that works, go all in and keep that as your base and really truly buy a lot of it so that you have it, because it's hard that long runs and stuff are typically on Saturdays, and Friday nights we're brain dead zombies and we're like, I don't have X, right?
Especially if it's a seasonal flavor,
yes.
right? So like, guess who has 8 bags of apple cider scratch in their house? Because
you do?
Oh yeah, and
you bought them all?
I bought a lot, and it's because it went away for 2 years,
yep.
and the flavor works for me, and a lot of getting in calories is being able to tolerate the taste. And
so if that's your jam, get on it. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So on the converse of that, if something isn't working, look at carbs, look at timing, look at electrolytes, textures, hydration clues, right? You will know. I think so many times nutrition is the culprit for a poor run or a poor race, but we have to kind of let go of that performance and like really kind of step back from it and start to pick it apart in terms of what might not have been working nutrition wise to understand how to make it better.
And finally, don't jump on trends or fads or what your friends are doing or what social media is pitching to you, which is creatine right now, apparently, which we will talk about in a future episode. Trial and error is really your best bet, because everybody's body is so personal, and your fueling and nutrition plan needs to be personal as well.
Oh, there's so much in this gut training one. This is perfectly timed. I know some of you might be heading into or have just done Chicago 13.1 by the time this one airs, but just know that if you're doing something in the fall, you have a really long runway to get some seriously awesome gut training in, and your body will be jamming. It'll be so happy. If you're interested in a more tailored approach, we also have a nutritionist on staff. Coach Robyn is rock star. She is the best sports dietitian in the city, in my opinion. She makes things really easy to kind of understand and apply, and she has both looking at your full training nutrition in terms of like everyday food, as well as just what you're doing during training and racing. So hit us up for that, and it's also available on our website.
All right, happy fueling, everybody.
All right, I want some of your scratch.
Yeah, I'll sell you some.
Until next time.